Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined as always by Mike Einello. This is the Group of Five Deep Dive. We're going to get into everything here in Week 12.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast.
All right, here we go.
Reminder to fans out there in the college football universe, we actually have 14 regular season weeks, a bonus regular season week this season, which is good because it's gone way too fast, even though we've been basically trying our best to tread water, get a win or two on the board. You did the heavy lifting last week. I know, really appreciate that. But we got some extra time. There's still time to turn this season around late. And there's some really interesting games this week on the card, not just from a gambling perspective, but also in terms of the college football playoff race. Is there a bear trap being laid by the Spartans for Boise State? We'll get into that during the episode. And of course, we're going to kick it off, as always, with a bit of positivity coming out of week 11 for our Heroes segment. Ianello, it seems as though in the pre-meeting, you had one chambered, ready to go. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, first of all, you said I finally got off the schneid with a nice 4-1 week, which I desperately need. Even my one loss, I mean, it was definitely the wrong side, but it didn't lose till a minute left in the game, my under. That felt really good. So in the spirit of me turning the season around, I'm going to turn around and take an unlikely hero of the week. I'm going to give my boy, Tim Beck, hero of the week, the head coach for Coastal Carolina, who I've been very hard on as a play caller and an offensive mind. But then he saved himself because before the game against App State, he was doing a little segment with Matt Berry and Dan Mullen, who, by the way, maybe a hot take, probably my favorite booth in college football. They are so good together. They have so much fun. They don't take themselves seriously. They usually have a lower level game. And you can just tell those two are such good friends. It comes through in the booth. I think they're fantastic. Anyway, they're doing a segment. I don't even remember what it was for, but they were like, cheers. It was like a beer product. And they were like, they were making a joke about chugging it. Matthew Bear's like, we got to all be professional here. Well, then they turn around and Tim Beck is just chugging his entire beer hours before the game. So Coastal then goes on to score 38 points, the second most they've scored since week 2. So it comes to the argument, is Tim Beck better when he's a little buzzed up? I mean, think about it. Think about when you were in college. The drunker you got, the better you got at beer pong. Or
to a degree, there was always a sweet spot.
Yes,
you needed to get like 3 or 4 drinks in you, but not go over the 8 or 9 threshold over the waterfall.
Between beer like 2.5 and 5.5.
That's when the elbow loosens up just in the right way.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of that arc on the shot.
Yeah.
Sure.
Beer pong, cornhole, you were better. So I think you can make an argument. Tim Beck is better after beer. So if I see him chugging a beer pregame, I might be on them again this week. But in honor of Tim Beck, we need to have a good show. So Tim Beck, let's have a good podcast. My hero of the week, the unlikely hero here.
I like that. That's a great hero. I'm going to go in a different direction. No hero whatsoever. It's villain time. We've never done a villain of the week. But as soon as the news broke and you shared it with me on social media, I just kind of sat at my computer just staring at it for a good 30 seconds, just slowly filling with rage. My villain of the week, Milton Overton, the Kennesaw State athletic director who had the unmitigated gall to fire head coach Brian Bohannon. Coach Bo was the OWL program. He's the only head coach they've ever had. Like, he built it literally from nothing. He built the goddamn program from nothing to 4 FCS playoff berths in a 5-year period before moving up. And by the way, everyone in the universe, whether you're playing the college football video game or doing preview season with us in August or just picking up a magazine and flipping to the back, everybody knew that Kennesaw was in a rebuild. It was a year 0. This was their first year at FBS football. They weren't going to be good. They freaking beat Liberty. Did you see that scene? Parents and players hugging. Coach Bo looked like the mayor of Kennesaw. It was amazing. And then he turns around in a 3-week period and fires this guy. Oh, by the way, adding insult to injury, Coach Bo had to come out and right the communication wrongs and say, I'm not actually stepping down. I'm not quitting on my team. I was forced out. I was fired. Have some balls, Kennesaw State. Say you fired him. Don't say, we gave him the opportunity to resign. Bullshit. You forced him out for no good reason. And by the way, this isn't a program in the SEC that wants to be bigger than they are, like a Tennessee or an Ole Miss, where they're like, we got to compete for national champions. So they went through years of quickly firing coaches and trying to be the Alabamas and Georgias of the world. You're Kennesaw. This is like day one. What better shepherd for your program, steward for your program than this guy? And they go ahead and force him out. What a scumbag move. My villain of the week, Milton Overton. And by the way, I'm not the only one who feels this way. The alumni are already circling the wagons. They're coordinating a blackout in the crowd to stand in unity with Coach Bo because they think so much of him and so little of Overton. You know what? You may be getting the opportunity to resign yourself there, Milton. All right? So my villain of the week coming from Conference USA.
By the way, his name being Milton Overton is so... I mean, that just sounds like a Bond villain. But yeah, this was an absolute crock of shit. And look if they fired him at the end of the season, fine. This is not a story. If they fire him at the end of the year. Why on God's green earth do you need to do this now? Why? You're not winning another game the rest of the year. You weren't going to anyway. And it's like you mentioned, it's not like, you're Tennessee or Florida, Florida firing Billy Napier so they can, if they know Lane Kiffin's going to come. Or you have a top recruit that's unhappy with the offense and you want to get in an offensive mind, or you want to be first at the line of the best coordinator in the country. You're Kennesaw State. You're the back of the line. You're going to be the back of the line, whether you fired him today or you fired him in April. You're getting the last coach. I will bet you $1,000 right now. I've never heard of the guy they're going to hire. Guarantee you.
So you've never heard of Hugh Freeze? I feel like this has got Hugh Freeze written all over it, baby. Come on down from the plains. It's not that far of a drive from Auburn, Alabama to Kennesaw. At least last time I checked.
This move made no sense. There's no reason. You're not getting a jump on the hiring cycle. You're not trying to save a recruiting class. You're Kennesaw State. You're the worst team in the country. This move is despicable, and I absolutely hate it. And Bohannon is now the first coach in history to go from G5 Hero of the Week to unemployed in less than 3 weeks. And yeah, it completely sucks. And I agree. This is a perfect villain of the week.
Now, because my hate cup runneth over and I hit you with a villain here out of week 11, I didn't have time to put together my thoughts on a hero. You're the de facto hero. You went 4-1 last week. Let's get to your best bet here in week 12. Keep this train rolling. You were laser focused. All the reads were correct last week. What you got for us?
Well, I actually just as I was taking that last sip, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm drinking a Kona Big Wave because it is, I would call this teal, I guess. So I was trying to honor Tim Beck. But it actually, I just realized, works out double perfectly because my best bet's Hawaii. -2.5 against Utah State. We have talked about the crazy offseason that Utah State had. This team is just in complete disarray. They're 2-7. Their only FBS win was by 2 points against Wyoming. They're outgained by 100 yards in that game. This team is terrible. Their biggest issue is clearly the defense. They rank 126th in the country in success rate. They're the bottom 10 against the run, against the pass. They're allowing a ridiculous 6.8 yards per play. You hand the ball off once, it's 2nd and 3. So in their last 5 games, 3 of their opponents have scored at least 50 points. And Washington State scored 49 last week. So they're just giving up points by the boatload. Kent State is the only team in the country that has allowed more than the 42 points per game Utah State is allowing. Over the last few weeks, I think Hawaii, their offense has really started to put it together. I've been really impressed with their offense over the last 3-ish weeks. They put up 34 on Nevada, 21 on Fresno State, but they moved the ball really well. Pair of wins there. They put up 27 on UNLV. They only lost that game by 2. I thought they played pretty well. They had the blocked punt touchdown safety. Ricky White did his thing again. But Braden Shager looks really good. He's coming off back-to-back 3 touchdown games. And the one before that, he had 4 touchdowns rushing. So he's playing good football. Not only do they have Ashlock at receiver, but Nick Senecal has established himself as that number 2 target in this offense, which we were kind of unsure with the McBride eligibility issues. So now they do have their 1-2 weapon, and Utah State can't run the ball at all. So their only real option is passing. But the problem is, 1, their quarterback is Spencer Petras, who stinks. And 2, I like Hawaii's pass defense. Defensive coordinator Dennis Thurman, he was a defensive back specialist. He was the DB's coach for the Jets during the Revis Island days. Hawaii ranks 18th in the country in coverage grade, and their job is a lot easier without Jalen Royals. The star Utah State wide receiver is out for the season, which sucks. But this team averages 290 receiving yards per game, and he averaged 119 of them. They have been held under 230 passing yards in each of the last 2 weeks since Royals got hurt. Their 2 lowest passing output since week 2. The offense just is lifeless without him. And you look at Hawaii, this is the time of year you start looking down where Hawaii's 4-6 right now. They need to win out to make a bowl, which is important to a program like this under Timmy Chang. So I think they get this one. I'm going to roll with the Rainbow Warriors here. Go Bows.
So this number being below 3, it's totally predicated on the historical data when it comes to Hawaii going to the mainland. In the database dating back to 2003, Hawaii has only cashed 41% of tickets against the spread on the mainland. That's dead last in the group of 5 dating back to 2003. Now, why do I have that written down, by the way? It's because it was in my G5 High Five picks. I'm also on the Bows here. I think it's the right side for a lot of reasons. And even that number right there, in terms of their against the spread performance dating back over 20 years. The reality is this year, they've looked pretty good in those trips. They went 15 rounds with San Diego State. Yes, it was a loss, but they acquitted themselves well against an Aztec team that at least had played better at home this season. And then, as you mentioned, if they beat Fresno on the road, they come back, they rally in the fourth quarter. They showed a lot of fight there. And this Utah State defense has no fight. You got into it, but I even have more stats to share. And I think we should, because this defense is a special kind of bad. In terms of available yards allowed percentage, they're 128th in the country. Any opportunity that teams have to move the ball, they do it. They've given up 45 points or more in 6 of 9 games, and that includes 45 points to Temple, which I think counts for 70 points against a regular FBS team. So I'm with you here. I think Shager, as long as they can protect him, that is the difference. Because when you look at Utah State, not only are they awful in terms of coverage and tackling and pass rush, but they don't create negative plays. They're 126 in that regard. And when Shager gets battered, they usually fall apart offensively. He took 6 sacks and only completed 40% of his passes in a narrow loss against UNLV, sacked 8 times against Boise when they only scored 7 points. But when they keep him upright and they keep him protected, he's a gamer. He's somebody that gives him a chance to win late in games as well. So with a number under the key figure of 3, I think this is the right play. So I like that a lot to get our program started. I'm going to go with my best bet. I had a rough week last week. So, in those opportunities, you got to go back to the tried and true, the breadwinners, North Texas overs, baby. Get me back involved. The Mean Green taking on UTSA. The number is sitting at 72.5, the highest on the board here in week 12. That doesn't scare me. A little Friday night lights. I think this is going to be an absolute shootout. Listen, it's been, as I mentioned, not just a rough week last week, about 2 weeks in a row for me. But I think we got a big gift in Army dispatching North Texas 14-3, because in my opinion, it is deflating this number. And the perception is that North Texas took a step backwards offensively. But in my estimation, when you look at it, that was just the absolute dream scenario for Army. Because let's keep in mind, North Texas has been the over team this entire season. They're 7-2 to the over. Offensively, scoring offensively, points per game, 17th in the country. Defensively, points per game, 119th. Total offense, 3rd. Total defense, 120th. So just absolutely the needle going in opposite directions, depending which side of the ball has it in North Texas games. But of their 7 games that went over this year, blowing past the over, and I think that's the fear factor. There's not been that many games with a number north of 70 this year in terms of the running clock on first downs, and a lot of teams playing keep away. They've gone over in those 7 games where they cashed by an average of 16.5 points per game. So blowing past it. And the Army buzzsaw that I just talked about, a perfect Army script for Bryson Daly, everything that they did. But you look at North Texas offensively, they only had 6 drives in the whole game. A red zone field goal, a turnover on downs at the 2, a pick in the end zone, a pick in the end zone. That was 4 of their 6 drives. So I'm just throwing out that data sample because that is not what you're going to get with 2 lightning quick tempo teams here. North Texas 4th in seconds per play, UTSA 9th in seconds per play. So just on that alone, I'm excited about this. Then you fold in the quarterback play. We talked about Chandler Morris. I didn't talk that much about Owen McCown in the preseason. I had a different pick for the Roadrunners as a quarterback. He's been fantastic in the last month. He's averaged 348 total yards per game across the last month, 13 total touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. And I think that's the difference. Him taking that step up to a Frank Harris light kind of level, it's elevated their entire offense. The last 3 games, 42.3 points per game, including an upset of Memphis, really has given them a shot in their arm in terms of their bowl chances. And that's the only thing that could scare me away in these late season MAC Conference USA games where you have some of these teams that are drawing dead from a bowl eligibility standpoint. That is not the case with the Roadrunners and the Mean Green here. They also get an opportunity to take a beat after upsetting Memphis. They got a week rest in between. I think there's less of a letdown factor. So my numbers call for this to be 77. 72.5 is absolutely an overplay for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this game up because this is a game I actually have on my cutting room floor that I was going to ask you at the end. I initially had this as in my high five, and I as North Texas -1.5. I actually started to write up the Mean Green. I was halfway through it, changed my mind, kicked it to the cutting room floor, and it's for exactly what you're talking about. Is McCown has been awesome in the last month, and you look at the UTSA offensive numbers; they're like 112 or something in that range. They can't run the ball at all, and they basically stopped trying to run the ball, which is what's helped their play. And like you said, McCall's coming off back-to-back 4 touchdown games, so I ended up basically bumping them off because I was afraid a little bit of how good UTSA is playing on offense. So that actually lends itself nicely to your over, especially because, they're going to be throwing the ball all game. UTSA's run defense has actually been pretty good. So I just think you see both teams just you're going to see, 48 pass attempts on both sides of this ball game. So yeah, I actually kind of like your over more than my North Texas play. So yeah, I'm glad you went with this one.
We move on to the G5 High Five, 5 picks, bundle them together in terms of a 2-pack of round robin picks or by 3s, or just, a 4-pick parlay in this case, because I've already mentioned Hawaii. We are, of like mind on that with the Bows. So we each have 2 this week in the segments. I'll kick it to you first, Ianello, as the hot hand.
I'm going to the MAC again. Cashed it last week. So this is Wednesday. So hopefully you're listening early. Get it in quick. I'm actually fading the team. Not really fading, but I'm going against the team that I cashed last week. Give me Akron plus 15.5 against Northern Illinois. This is just as simple. I think this number's too big. I talked about Akron a few weeks ago when I cashed them on the money line. They've just been underrated all year because their non-conference was brutal. And, they lost some close games that they probably should have won. But I just think they're continuing to be underrated because they're Akron and they got 2 wins on the year. But you look at their last 4 games. They lost to Bowling Green by 7. Bowling Green is both of our picks to win the MAC. They lost to Western Michigan by 10. They beat Eastern Michigan. That was one I had. And then they lost to Buffalo by 11. Ben Finley is an experienced quarterback. He provides a steady hand for them. He's nothing special, but he's fine. Michigan State transfer Jordan Simmons has been running the ball really well for the Zips recently. They're 38th in the country in success rate. They've been leaning on that more and more deeper into the season. And then we know this Northern Illinois team, they want to run the ball and they want to play defense. They want to shorten the game. There's not a team that profiles as like a blow your doors off as a big favorite. They just want to get in, get their business done, and get out. They're not really an explosive offense. And their strength is running the ball. And I think Akron's defense, while not anything to write home about, they've been much better at defending the run than the pass. So Akron's also coming off a bye week here. So Joe Moorhead has had more time to prepare. They've had like 11 days to prepare. And you look at this Northern Illinois team, as much as they've had a good year, the only team they've beaten all year by more than 14 is Western Illinois in the season opener. So again, they're just not a team that blows teams out. That's just not how they play. They're short in the game, run the ball, play defense. I think that suits well for Akron. I think they're going to do the same thing. I think the Zips keep it close on Wednesday night. I like this anything north of 14.
I'm going to give you a compliment here. I have not looked in the app. I don't know if Stucky's on it, but this feels like a Stucky MAC play. This is definitely deep in the trash, but also just pointing out that there's not a huge spread differential between MAC teams top to bottom, and certainly a Northern Illinois team that struggles offensively to create big explosive plays and to absolutely lay huge numbers on people. Even if they are to cover this number, I would not feel comfortable with this offense being able to make it sweat free. Certainly, like I got to be up 28 points in the fourth quarter to not sweat this one out. I pass on that. So I think just from a situational spot, given how much we know about the MAC and how much there's kind of a log jam of mediocre teams in that conference, whereas, at least with this dog, you have a quarterback you can trust. I mean, that's a lot more than you can say about many teams at the bottom of the G5. So I think your point is well taken there.
Yeah, I just looked as of Tuesday night. Stuckey has not bet it yet, but I agree with you. I wouldn't be shocked if he. I'll be very happy if I see this come in Wednesday morning because obviously he is the MAC maestro. This was actually the first bet I made this week. Akron opened at 18.5, and I was like, that's crazy. So it was the first bet I made. Zips 18.5. It's been bet down. It's all the way down to 15.5. Like I said, I still like it. I think I like anything more than 2 touchdowns. So get in as soon as you can. I think these standalone games the lines tend to move a lot more because everyone's betting it because it's the only game. So hopefully you listen to this early Wednesday morning and you can jump on the Zips with me.
Last week, I hitched my wagon to John Mateer. It was a good decision against Utah State. They went ballistic offensively. They scored 49 points. Seemed like every drive was a quality drive against the Aggies. They're on the road in Albuquerque playing New Mexico. They're laying 12.5. I don't think it's enough points under the key number of 2 scores, 2 touchdowns, I should say, because this reeks of the old BCS days. And by that, I mean style points in capital letters. I just wrote it up in the New York Post. At Bet Parks, you can get Wazoo to make the college football playoff at 50-1. I think there's a very good likelihood that they are going to be 11-1, which then means that there's certain elements of that play that are outside of their control. Namely, they need Notre Dame and Army to lose some games. If Army could upset Notre Dame and potentially knock them out of an at-large spot, and then have Army lose in the AAC title game, yes, these are things that are unlikely to happen in that exact order.
They need 8 SEC teams to lose 4 games.
No, see, I disagree. I think when you look at, they beat the doors off of Texas Tech, they beat Washington on a neutral site. I agree. The rest of their schedule is underwhelming, but the fact of the matter is, I think there's a little bit of human nature, and where the committee has them right now, I believe they're at 18. Crazier things have happened in terms of movement late in polls, and we still have 3 weeks of the regular season left and an opportunity on championship weekend for some teams that are sitting there with 1 or 2 losses to get an extra loss and potentially be bumped out of that at-large conversation. But that is not what this is all about. Although, last thing I'll say, ESPN's All-State Playoff Predictor says Wazoo, if they win out, they got a 13% chance to make it as an at-large bid. At 50-1, I rolled the dice on that. I think that's good value. But onto this game, onto the field. Let's talk it up. Wazoo needs to run it up. That's it. This is what they have to do. It's still human nature. If they can beat New Mexico by 45 points and start running away from teams late in the season, I think they have a better opportunity to be at least a talking point in the room of the College Football Playoff Committee. And I think they know that. They're certainly not going to play it conservatively if they get an opportunity. And they have the offense to just lay it on New Mexico, because the theme of this week for me is give me as many awful defenses on my card, either to fade them or go over with, as I can. And Christ, New Mexico is just dreadful on defense. I love this offense. I love what Broncos been able to do in year one. And you usually see this in rebuild situations. You get the right quarterback in, you get the right offensive coordinator, you even get yourself 1 or 2 playmakers. They have it at running back. They certainly have it at Wysong out on the perimeter now that he's healthy again. Great job, Bronco. You made this offense absolutely above average by Mountain West standards in 1 year. But this is easily a bottom 5 run defense, and they've made lousy defenses look incredible. They gave up 49 points and 600 yards to Wyoming at home. So when you look at how low is the floor on this defense, they're subterranean. They are just the Moneyball reference. There's rich teams, there's poor teams, there's 500 feet of crap, and then there's us. The 500 feet of crap and down below, that's the New Mexico defense. So when I look at this, I got a dual threat superstar in John Mateer, and a linebacking core that I think is going to get picked apart, not only in that intermediate passing game where Mateer absolutely thrives. He is super elite in the quick game in that medium range, 10 to 20 yards downfield. In that 10 to 19 yard window, 84 grade out of 100 from PFF. And that means slants, hitches, out routes. In that window, New Mexico is bottom 15 defending all 3 of those. So I think the linebackers are going to be victimized here. And then finally, the real question here, laying 12.5, is if Wazoo does what I think they can do, which is threaten a 50 burger, can they get any stops? Now, New Mexico, at least down the stretch, I know that Wysong was hurt for a portion of it, but Colorado State held them to 6. San Diego State held them to 21. That's all in the past 3 weeks. How did those teams do it? Because they still gave up a lot of yards. Colorado State gave up 450 plus to the Lobos, almost 475 against the Aztecs. but both of those defenses got off the field on third down. 38% of their conversions is all the Lobos could get. That's the exact number dead on for Wazoo's third down defense this year. And then finally, the Cougs have been solid in the red zone. They're top 40 in scoring percentage allowed. So I think they're going to get off the field a few times. I think they're going to force them to kick some field goals or go for it on fourth down in the red zone, maybe get some stops there. I think it'll be enough. I'm not going to say it'll be sweat free because the New Mexico offense does have my respect. The back door may be open, but I'm going to go ahead and lay any number below 14.
Yeah, I like it. I think, my only pushback would just be Washington State has like crazy splits home versus away. They've been just a completely different team at home. But I agree. I think 12 is still probably too short. But I think this would be obviously over 14 if it was at home. Yeah, I like it. Speaking of fading defenses, I'll do it as well. We'll stick with the theme here. Butch better have my money. And by the way, Butch owes us some money because I think you're like 0 for 4 betting Arkansas State.
No, that is not correct. I think I lost the last one for sure because, to quote my good friend Brett McMurphy, this just in, Louisiana just scored another touchdown on the Arkansas State defense. Yeah, that was a brutal performance, but I think I was 2-1 with the Red Wolves before that.
Real quick tangent. If Boise loses in the conference title game, which now looks like Colorado State, Louisiana or Tulane or two lost Boise?
I think probably Louisiana if they keep playing like this because their metrics are really, really strong, particularly in the offensive side. And I know the committee looks at things like that.
Tulane's currently ranked ahead of them, and they'll pick up wins over Navy, Memphis, and Army. So that might propel them ahead.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to Arkansas State plus 2.5. This is honestly more about just continuing to fade this Georgia State team once again. They're finally back at home after that 4-game road trip that we cashed last week as JMU blew them out. But that had to have taken a toll on them. It's just been a long month. It's been a long season. They've now lost 6 games in a row. The defense is getting worse and worse and worse. They've allowed at least 30 points 4 games in a row in 7 of their last 9 games. They're giving up 6.4 yards per play, and this is exactly what Arkansas State's offense needs right now. The Red Wolves are a team that's been inconsistent all year. It's cost us both money, but the theme has kind of been the offense has played really well against bad defenses. You look at them on the year. This offense lit up Central Arkansas, Tulsa, South Alabama, Southern Miss, and Troy, and then they lost to the 4 best teams they played. And yeah, we thought they'd keep it close in those games. They really didn't, but they hummed against the bad teams, and Georgia State falls into that category of teams they should light up. Arkansas State has their issues on defense as well, but I don't trust the Panthers offense to be able to keep up with all the explosive weapons the Red Wolves have. We talk about Rucker and Jackson on the outside, Rayner. So I just don't think at this point Georgia State, I get they're back at home, but they shouldn't really be favored against anybody right now. And it's probably why they're 0-3 against the spread as a favorite. So give me Arkansas State. I think they're a team that just profiles as beat up on bad teams, get blown out by good teams. They're playing a bad team. I don't know why they're the dog here. Give me the Red Wolves.
I had Arkansas State in my G555. I made it 25% to the write-up, and then I just hit the delete button because Butch killed my vibe last week, and I needed a little break. I needed a pause from Butch.
As I was writing it, I was like, he probably has this.
And just like that, I took a break from Trent Dilfer last week. I'm back to Trent Dilfer this week, but on a different angle. UAB Memphis over 62.5. I'm confused by this total, to be honest. Memphis AAC games have averaged 68 total points, but you have to take into account that includes a stinker from USF in Bryce Archie's first start where Memphis won 21-3. In the other 5 conference games, the total points scored average 77. I think that's a lot closer to the games that they want to play. Certainly a game that they want to play here against a UAB team that's rounding into, let's call it what it is, North Texas-esque half team kind of shape. Dating back to mid-September, UAB has either scored or allowed 35 points in all but 1 game. So basically every game that they're in has the potential for a shootout. And Jalen Kitna has come in and he's been bombing away. And because I've harped so much on Dilfer, I've been there for the press conferences. I've watched the film. We called Jacob Zeno what he is, a checkdown merchant. I have to say, I'm a little bit shocked by what's going on with their offense because in Kitna's starts.
By the way, everyone out there can cash their Let's put it conservatively at plus 850 tickets on Trent Dilfer not being the first villain of the week.
I know that was a little bit shocking there. Yeah, so I mean, back to Kitna for a second. 42 attempts per game, but here's the difference: their passing strategy has changed with him as the starting quarterback. No more check down merchant. He's still hitting some short passes, no doubt, but he has a healthy, at least by comparison to Zeno, yards per attempt average and A dot. Last two games, his A dot is well north of 9 yards, which basically puts him well outside of what UAB has been doing in the year and a half of Dilfer's reign. Now he's up against a Memphis defense that, let's call it what it is, they're subpar. Their pass rush is outside the top 100. They live and die on turnovers. 17 takeaways this season for their defense, and when they don't get them, they give up huge total yardage numbers. UAB has been a giveaway machine, 19 giveaways on the season. If I can get 24 points out of the Blazers, I think this one goes way over into the alternate over sphere, where it's like if you get 2-1 at north of 70, I think you go ahead and take that, because this UAB defense is still horrific. They're 123rd in rushing success defense. Hello, Mario Anderson.
I was just gonna say that if you want to take some alt bets, take Mario Anderson over 100 yards rushing, because he's going to and to probably have 2 touchdowns. He's going to torch this defense. You can find
the bottom,
Anderson.
Yeah. It's bananas that if there are any numbers on him below 149 rushing yards, go for multiple touchdowns, because you look at UAB. They are bottom 5 in line yards and stuff rate against the run. And when teams can run, what that translates to is successful, consistent drives. They're 114th in quality drives allowed. Memphis is top 30 when they have the ball offensively. They got an experienced quarterback. They have a decent offensive line. I think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to go north of 40 here. And with this number just sitting at 62.5, I just think that's way too low. So I'm going to go ahead at the over here in what should be an AAC shootout.
I like it.
All right, we're going to finish up with the Moneyline Underdog Parlay here in Week 12. I'm going to go first in this spot because I'm going to mention a team that you had the little pennant. It was Go Pokes Go, Laradice, Laramie, everything Wyoming early in the season. Craig Bowles gone. It's fine. It was a disaster there for a bit. But you know what? You took your medicine. You owned up to it. And now things are changing, because the Pokes got Harrison Whaley at running back in that backfield. He plays one game against New Mexico, 27 carries, 170 yards, a touchdown. They score 49 points in that win. Oh, and by the way, with them running the ball effectively, really for the first time all season, Caden Anderson, a freshman, comes out of nowhere and shreds the Lobos for 342 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing score. Colorado State. I don't want to say what I want to say about them, so I'm going to try to put some euphemisms out there and try to put on the kid gloves a little bit. Yes, they control their own destiny in the Mountain West Conference. They are undefeated. They can play their way into a matchup with Boise, but now they got some pressure on their shoulders because it's there. And when you look into the resume, they do not look like a 6-3 team that's undefeated in conference play. Let's just call it what it is. Since the loss of Torrey Horton, the passing game is underwhelmed. Offensively, overall, they're 94th in success rate, 109th in explosiveness, 113th in havoc allowed. These numbers do not compute until you get to their victory diet. Let me go through what's been on the menu for them. Wins over Northern Colorado, UTEP, Air Force, New Mexico, Nevada. Jesus Christ. This schedule, where was this schedule when I went over on their win total a couple of years ago? This would have been a nice, free squares all over the schedule. Their only good win, a home win over San Jose State by 7. They still gave up nearly 450 total yards in that game to the Spartans. Very lucky in terms of fumble recoveries this year. They're tied for 10th among G5 teams in falling on the football. Is this team a luck box? I won't use the F word that we throw around there. Not that one you're thinking of. The other one. Is this team a luck box? I mean, I like their coaching staff. I like what they've been trying to do. But once they lost Torrey Horton, I downgraded them in my power rankings, and also just in my head in terms of what I'm picturing. Oh, I got to win the game. They're down 10 in the fourth quarter. Do they have the bullets to do it? Without Torrey Horton, I assumed no, but they just keep winning, and I think they're overvalued in the market, and Wyoming has a new look offensively. If I can get them at north of 3-1 in this game, I'm punching the ticket on the money line.
Yeah, obviously I don't hate it at all. I've been high on Wyoming all year, stupidly. Evan Svoboda, not Josh Allen. But you mentioned Whaley's return, which I liked. Sam Scott, their other running back who kind of filled in. He actually missed last game. He's expected back. Jalen Sargent's going to play. They announced he left the game hurt last week after he put up like 150 yards and then he left hurt. He's going to play. Their third receiver, Tyler King, he's coming back. He missed last week. So Wyoming should be at full strength. So I don't hate it one bit. This has already been a bit of a weird podcast. We started with me complimenting Tim Beck. You were saying nice things about the UAB offense. So when I get crazy, give me FAU plus 120 against.
This is really the upside down from Stranger Things. This is this crossover episode.
Yeah, David, put the Stranger Things sound just kind of in the background for the entire episode. For starters, Temple's horrific. They are a bottom 7 or 8 team in the country. You can argue bottom 5. You could argue 10, whatever. You never want to see somebody get hurt. But Cam Fancher broke his collarbone against East Carolina. He's out for the season. Kason Wiseman comes in. He is a redshirt freshman. He came in and he went 20 of 35 passing, threw a pair of touchdowns. He also had 41 yards rushing. I thought he looked much better than Fancher has all season. He cost me my under bet in that game, so he owes me here. And, we know the FAU offense hasn't been good all season, but like I said, I actually think Wiseman might be a step up. And the defense, I never really thought it's been completely bottom of the barrel, but they also did just fire a defensive coordinator and run game coordinator, kind of that Tom Herman save his job type move. But I expect to see some more urgency in this game. I think, anytime you start firing assistants, it kind of lights a fire under everyone, staff, the players, everyone kind of perks up a bit. So they've been pretty decent against the pass this year, and that's going to help against a Temple offense that literally cannot run the ball at all. Kazir Brown is a solid cornerback. He's good in coverage. Philip Dunham has really good ball skills at safety. He's an Indiana transfer. And I think the two of them should be able to work together to slow down Dante Wright if he plays. Because Wright has missed the last 2 games with an injury. And he's a guy where, Temple's terrible. He's a pretty talented kid. I don't know what his options might be in the portal. Does he shut it down? Because without him, this offense is nothing. So even if he plays, like I said, I still kind of just think FAU is a better team, as down as I am on FAU. If he doesn't, I don't know how Temple moves the ball. They haven't moved the ball in the last 2 weeks. So we've talked a lot of shit on the Owls here, but give me FAU plus 120 against the other Owls of Temple.
Yeah, I feel like we need kind of a round robin Owl bowl series, I guess, for all these Owl teams that are not going to make it. Rice is doing their best to mount some wins late in the season. I guess they could be
the Tootsie Pop Bowl.
Any other cutting room floor picks that you want me to vet before we get out of here?
I have 3. Give me your favorite of this one. I already mentioned North Texas minus 1.5 against UTSA on Friday. We probably should talk on this game a little bit more. I kind of like Tulane minus 6.5 against Navy. I feel like we've been the Service Academy boys all year, riding with them. Obviously, Navy bounced back. Horvath looked good, but man, Tulane just looks awesome. And maybe I'm just because I bet them and I was watching the game and they smoked Temple, but Tulane just seems like they're in killer mode right now. The offense is humming with Hughes and Mensah, so I kind of like Tulane minus 6.5. And then going back to the well, James Madison minus 2.5 against Old Dominion. I couldn't pull the trigger against Ricky Ronnie, but I did consider it. I really like James Madison. Old Dominion's looked better with the QB change, and their defense is playing really well right now. But James Madison, I still really like this team. So if you had to pick between North Texas, Tulane, and James Madison, what's your favorite of that group?
I think I would go Tulane and just go aggressive just for the value. I think if the roof caves in on Navy, it's going to get bad in the same way it did against Notre Dame and East Rutherford. If you could take Tulane minus 13.5 at north of 2-1, I think that's an interesting bet. I think if everything clicks for them and they force Navy to be one-dimensional, because a big part of Navy's explosiveness in the pass game is get into those second and manageable, third and manageables where the defense has to respect all the pre-snap motion where it may be an option, and all of a sudden you're working people on flood routes where there's multiple levels, and all of a sudden one guy's wide open. You get into those clear passing down situations, all of a sudden the eye candy is not as convincing, and I think Tulane can get off the field. So if I were to play that Tulane side, I think I'm going to go for the absolute blowout potential. And also, as we mentioned it with Wazoo, Tulane's in a similar boat where even if they win the AAC, they could get into, kind of this resume debate in terms of the committee. You want to have wins that are impressive. Navy, with so many wins stacked up on the season, if you can beat them going away by 2 and 3 and 4 touchdowns, you're going to try to do it. It's a little bit strange because at the Power 4 level, you're seeing less of that, where it's like survive and advance, just get to a conference title game or have an opportunity to be inside of the top 12 comfortably. You're good. Whereas for the G5 teams, it's the old BCS days. You absolutely need to have this perception that you are a beast and that you need an opportunity against a Power 4 team, and the committee has to give it to you and make it undeniable. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm totally glad you brought that up, because I kind of want to mention it. That's kind of was part of my question earlier about if Boise loses, because I don't think Boise needs to. I think if Boise wins out, they're in no matter how they do it. But that's kind of my point, is the rest of those teams, because there isn't a clear dominant team. There's not a clear top dog. They all have, 1 or 2 losses. Tulane's Oklahoma loss is not aging well. The Kansas State one actually looks better, so that helps them. But yeah, I think, all these teams are basically hoping Boise trips up. And if they do, it's going to be a beauty contest, because you're not only comparing teams, you're comparing conferences. So, Tulane needs Memphis to win, so then they beat Memphis, and they desperately need Army to beat Notre Dame and then beat Army in the conference title game, and then obviously Army needs to win that game. But I agree. I think, the Tulane, Louisiana, Army, if they run the table, I mean, they probably just need to beat Notre Dame, but they need to smoke teams, because we just saw Louisiana do it. So and Tulane just did it against Temple. The more Tulane can stack up these big wins to position themselves as the clear number 2 if Boise trips. I agree with you. That was my thought process last week, taking Tulane. Kind of why I'm leaning them again with Navy as well. Against Navy.
I'll end with one question. If Army were to win out, including a win over Notre Dame, do you think that they would get the top G5 seed and leapfrog Boise with having that one loss, even though it was at Oregon on the last play of the game?
If Army goes undefeated,
mm-hmm.
I think they do. Honestly, I think because it's Army plays a factor, like Service Academy, great story, respect the troops. You're un-American if you don't. The only thing that could hurt them is just, God, if you put them in and then they lose to Navy, that's such a bad look. And just the fear of that happening. I almost wish they could put a caveat, you're in if you win. If you lose, Boise's in. Can you put a choose your own adventure in the bracket? Honestly, I mean, they both might get in if that happens. I mean, because what's Boise ranked right now? 12?
Oh, I think if they both win out, they're both in, regardless
11.
of getting an auto bid. But I do think it is an interesting argument about who deserves, because Army's strength of schedule, yes, it would improve down the stretch with Notre Dame and a potential win in the AAC title game, but the rest of their schedule has been fluff.
I think Boise would have to play UNLV and house them. I think if Boise plays Colorado State, that's not going to bump them up at all.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute valid point.
I agree with the Army cupcake, but a win versus Notre Dame is way better than anything Boise's done.
Well, it's interesting you say that, though, because they beat Wazoo, and they beat him convincingly. At that point, if Wazoo finishes 11-1, they'll be higher ranked than Notre Dame. But perception, it's the name brand.
I think everyone would agree Notre Dame would be a 10-point favorite against Wazoo.
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing about the committee. It's did they have respect for their own rankings?
No.
Or are they thinking about hypothetical matchups, going deep in the analytics? We just don't know what's going on in that room.
I think the committee first and foremost thinks brands. And I think Notre Dame is, if not the end-all be-all brand of college football, it's certainly in the top 5. So I think a win versus Notre Dame, especially if it's somewhat convincing, I think trumps everything else anyone would do.
That's it for us here at the Group of 5 Deep Dive. I'm Mike Calabrese. He's Mike Iannello. A reminder, on the programming front, you can listen early now to all of Colin and Stuck's episodes dropping on Thursday nights, getting into the full Week 12 card from the bottom of the trash all the way up to the marquee matchups. And that leads into our Saturday show live with Brett McMurphy,
by the way,
Colin Stuck, Johnny Football, and myself, Iannello. What do you got for us?
Do you ever get a little insulted that half of Stucky's trash is just picks we give out as our best bets? Hey, Stucky, our culture is not your costume, okay, buddy? Like this is where we live. These are our shiny diamonds over here.
You know what? I'm fine with it because the fact of the matter is the G5 keeps me employed. I get to talk about this for a living. If he wants to call it trash or people want to make fun of Maction or small time college basketball when I'm covering it in January, that's fine. I love it. I'm going to do it every single week. It is fun on the Saturday show that I get to talk about the marquee matchups. If you look at my performance on the live show, when it comes to the marquee matchups, I've been killing it the entire season. I think it's like all of the drudgery that we have to go through some really bad football. And I'm like, I get to just take a Jalen Milroe rushing over. This guy is like he would have 5,000 total yards of offense in the Mountain West. This is incredible.
I did a radio hit on Saturday and I was kind of blind to it. And I'd come in with notes prepared. I had all my notes on Tulane and James Madison as like my favorite bets. And they're like, so who do you got in a big Alabama LSU game? And I was like, can I interest you in Alonzo Barnett? No, I was like, I don't know. I don't really dig into these teams as much. I don't have many notes prepared.
So if you are interested in the people that do have notes prepared for those marquee games, as I mentioned, Colin and Stuck, Brett McMurphy, Johnny Football, and myself on the Saturday live show, 10:30 a.m. over at the BBOC YouTube channel. Make sure to hit subscribe, like, comments. All of those interactions really help us to grow the brand. And a reminder, the next 5-star review, I'm going to give out another $10 free parlay out of my own pocket. You can put together picks that we give out or your own. I don't really care how you do it, but just go ahead and give us a 5-star review. Say whatever you want. It'd be helpful for you to say something other than nice picks, blank wad, or garbage or whatever. But you know what? This is America. You are free to do whatever you want as long as you give us 5 stars. That would be fantastic. And I'm happy to help you grow your bankroll. That's it for us. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great weekend here in week 12 and cherish it because college football is steaming towards the postseason. Fewer games. That makes us sad here in G5 land, but at least we got 3 more weeks of it. Enjoy.